Yep.
So you believe in Christ, Jesus Christ, your Savior. Do you think this is the best way to get other people to believe that? Because I follow Christ too.
Yeah.
So I'm against everything, and I agree with what you say, just not how you're saying it.
Why? What's wrong with what I'm saying? Ooh, how I'm saying it?
Because this is not drawing. Did you ever find once in the Bible where Jesus talked to the crowds this way?
Well, how do you know how Jesus talked to the crowds?
I read God's word.
Were you there? Did you hear the way he proclaimed?
I'm just saying, I don't think this is the best means of how I believe the same things you do, but I don't know. I mean, I don't agree with abortion. I really think Christ is our Lord and Savior, but this is not the best way to draw people to His love and who He is.
Well, I mean, was Jesus living in a nation where most people were murdering their own children?
Yes. There was so much,
in Israel?
And there was so much that sin and people sacrificing children and things like that.
So they had killing centers in Israel where people were going in and slaughtering children, and there were people on birth control in Israel, like murdering their own children, and people were people murdering their children through IVF down the street in Israel. No.
There was different ways of doing it. So like maybe the picture looks different. They obviously didn't have Barnes and Nobles, but yes, that type of sin is not different from 10,000 years ago to now to 100 years ago. It's not. Okay, it was actually just as bad in certain periods where Saul and different kings
but there can be greater sins and more of that greater sin, right?
I think I'm with you, but this is not the best way to do it.
Why? So like children are being mass murdered and nobody cares. Very few people care, and everybody's going about their business like everything's okay. Where children are being murdered in killing facilities constantly in this area, and you think it's weird for me to be crying out for justice and like acting like it's an imminent emergency situation. So like if children are about to be mass murdered and you want to sound the alarm, you say, hey everybody, kids are being murdered. I hope you agree with me. Maybe I can convince you if we have a nice conversation. Maybe you'll start yelling and saying, hey everybody, there's a mass killing incident that's going to happen tomorrow, and I know when and where it's going to happen. So are you going to try to stop it? What are you going to do about it? You know, you need to be urgent and bold with your message. That communicates, like the message is communicated by the methodology. Like the methodology is part of the message. So
not necessarily.
Yes. So you could
dilutes the message.
Well, my methodology communicates the urgency of the situation, because if I'm not yelling, do people really understand that mass murder is going to happen tomorrow morning to thousands of children in this nation? Probably not. I need to act with urgency and boldness.
I don't think they do it with you yelling either.
Right, exactly.
Well, I need to be consistent. Like, how would I live if tomorrow morning I knew when and where they were going to shoot children in a school shooting? Would I be like, oh, now I need to like have conversations with people? Maybe I'd sound an alarm and like yell, you know? Like when you're in a building with a fire and people are in imminent danger, you yell, right? You say, hey, get out of here, fire, get out of here. So you don't just whisper that, you know, you don't talk normally, you communicate the urgency of the situation. I'm also raising my voice so a lot of people can hear me. Like that's preaching, that's how you preach. So when you raise I have to raise my voice so I'm loud, right? And I
think there's other ways to do it. I've just been you're not conveying the message that you want.
Well, that's your assumption. That's your assumption.
It's not an assumption.
How do you know what's going on in people's minds? You can't read people's minds.
Jimmy's Grill, and they're like repulsed by, and it's like, oh my goodness, like I agree with what you're saying. It's not with what you're like screaming at people like this. Maybe if you try to engage a conversation with Jimmy, and then you know what happens is maybe you get to one person tonight. I don't think you've gotten to one person tonight. Maybe you get to that one person. That one person goes to 10 other people in a way that they can communicate to those people.
Nobody can come to God unless the Holy Spirit changes their heart. You understand that?
True.
So I could come with like the softest way possible, and they would still reject God. Why? Because they're dead in their sin. They cannot do anything to come to God. They're spiritually dead.
Did he scream at her and say, "What the fuck are you doing? You need to believe it. What are you screw another 100 men?" No, he said you need water.
Right.
You need to drink life.
Right. Guess what? Jesus took a
Yeah,
whip
he
to
didn't
people,
condemn her
ma'am.
and scream and
Jesus
yell at her.
turned people's tables over and took a whip to them. Do you forget that?
That was in the temple.
So what about it? People who were
To the
sinning.
religious Pharisees.
Oh no, that's an assumption. The Bible doesn't say they were Pharisees. I don't believe. People who were selling things. You don't know who they were. Does it say exactly who they were? They were sinners because they were sinning by selling things in the temple.
Controlled what happened in the temple.
But it doesn't say the high priest was the person that he was taking whip to.
No.
And most of the people driving around here are religious hypocrites like the Pharisees. You know, people who go to church and practice the religious rituals, and then like they neglect the weightier matters of the law. What did Jesus do? He harshly rebuked the religious leaders for neglecting the weightier matters of law. He said, "Woe to you, Pharisees, hypocrites!" Exclamation point. You tithe mint, dill, and cumin. He said, you tithe, but you neglect the weightier matters of the law. Justice, mercy, faithfulness. So he harshly rebuked religious leaders who did that, okay? There's a lot of religious hypocrites who need a harsh rebuke out here.
So do you support universal health care and paid
on.
maternity
The
leave?
methodology communicates the message, okay? And I'd encourage you to think about what you're going to do about this, you know? How are you going to communicate to people that this is mass murder?
I completely agree with you. And how do you pray for? You give to ministries that are actively engaged.
Do you think that's the appropriate response to mass murder? Giving money to an organization and praying and like...
I think that's part of it.
Okay, we need a lot more than that, right? We should have millions of people marching in the streets like weekly, right? That's what mass murder on an epic scale demands.
Sure.
So I'd encourage you to go out to the streets to educate tons of people and act like it's a big deal, you know? Is our methodology communicating what's actually going on? It's not currently.
The methodology, I think, is far more effective going to the individual as opposed to the people that are hearing the message and being turned off by the methodology.
Do you understand that like this can operate at a subconscious level? So even though their first reaction will be, oh, I don't like that, they can still remember back when they saw this image and that guy making a big deal about it, and God can still use that, you know? And if you have tons of people, like constantly crying out against mass murder, if you're constantly reaching tons of people and acting like this is mass murder and making a big deal about it and crying out for justice on the streets, people are, over time, they're gonna start to think differently about it. I look weird because I'm like one of two guys who are doing it right now, but if there were tons of Christians out here doing this on a regular basis, people wouldn't think it would be so weird. So I have to do what I encourage other people to do, so I encourage you to do that. I have to do it first, even though I'm gonna look weird, I'm gonna still do it and encourage others to do it until we have thousands of people doing it like we should. But instead we have thousands of Christians going about their business like everything's okay when they're living in history's most devastating Holocaust. Yes.
It's getting worse and worse.
This is history's most devastating genocide. We've murdered well over 60 million children since 1973. There are children being murdered all around us that we can't even see because people are on birth control right now. Hormonal birth control that prevents implantation. There's children being murdered right down the street by in vitro fertilization. Their parents come there and they become serial killers. Will your pastor talk about that? You know, will your pastor talk about how your church is going to address that and stop it? Or maybe like adopt the embryonic children and take them out of the freezer? Right, so who's gonna do that? You know, everybody's acts like it's no big deal. You have people who go to church and then they go there and do that. You have people who go to church and they're on hormonal birth control. People in the church is murdering their own children. No big deal, nobody cares. People sleep in on Saturday morning when they know when and where children are being mass murdered at Planned Parenthood. The fourth largest Planned Parenthood in the nation, right down the street, murders around 100 children every week. And what is the response? Oh, I'm gonna sleep in. I'm gonna do whatever I want on Saturday morning. I know kids are being murdered, but it's no big deal. I don't need to go there to try to rescue them or anything. It's absolutely insane. So Christians need to wake up. This area needs to wake up. And people, I'm gonna act consistently. Okay, so think about what you're gonna do. Think about what you're gonna do. Oh, I know what I'm gonna do.